Welcome back to another episode of Capital Ideas, where we celebrate the innovators with bright ideas in the capital markets that help make those ideas into reality. I'm Nick Morgan. I am a co-host of Capital Ideas and the founder of ICAN.
And I'm Darrell Albright, co-host of Capital Ideas and proud board member of ICAN. And today we have a very special episode, so please join us in welcoming Ramona Ortega to today's show. Ramona was named one of 2020's most notable women in financial advice by Crain's Business and is the founder of WealthBuild, and that is described as AI-powered financial advisor in your pocket. So let's begin. Ramona, first question to you is, how has your innovation enhanced lives in terms of user experience, job creation, and or investor access to capital?
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me today. Always great to be in conversation with the ICAN folks. I've participated in a number of conversations about capital markets and democratizing advice and investing. That's sort of my life's work, particularly around financial inclusion for underrepresented groups and founders. So I was a previous Wall Street attorney. That's sort of my background. That's how I got into finance. Always been passionate about financial literacy and more importantly, financial mobility. So how do we get people to really thrive in their finances? And obviously one of those is access to capital markets and it's really being an investor and really embracing the investor identity. So as a founder, I think that always active in opportunities to build knowledge around access to capital, because as a woman founder, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, it's often complicated and difficult, more challenges as a builder in Silicon Valley. But in terms of what we're building, I'm going to hit on all three of those because I think that what we're building is actually at the forefront of leveraging AI for good. I think, everyone's talking about AI, right? It's the new shiny object in Silicon Valley and everywhere else. And it's really is just an impressive tool when we talk about big, large language models, which is LLM models, which is ChatGPT is built on top of. And what we're doing is leveraging that technology to really execute on the idea that everyone should get quality financial advice that's personalized and sort of on demand. And so the way that we're doing that is we're building out a chatbot that will be able to answer your financial questions based on the data that not only are you providing, but if it's integrated with your bank, then it's also going to be able to look at your accounts and provide that information for you. And how does this get people access to the capital markets? In a number of ways. One is almost, over 50% of the questions have to do with investment. So we've done a lot of beta testing. We've, got a lot of sort of data that we've built the model around, and almost all of the sort of high level questions have to do with some sort of investment vehicle. How do I manage my 401k? How do I get started investing? What's a 529? What's a 401k rollover? How do I do it? Right? I mean, there's so many things, how to maximize their tax advantages. What are capital gains? Should I have a Robinhood account? These are all questions that I think for so many people, what I call the sort of the 99% that fall into Gen Z and millennials, those are the questions that they really want answers to, and they don't necessarily want to be sold a product. First, they want the information. They want to feel engaged. They want to feel that they are given that information based on their personal experiences and or their data. And then they want to be kind of walk through that process, because it's one thing to know, for example, what a brokerage account is. Okay, I theoretically get it. Sure, I can buy stocks, etc. But two, how do I use it? How is it part of my portfolio? Like, what does it mean? What does it mean to building wealth? And what are the rules around it that I need to pay attention to? Right. So that's a really important part of understanding and the financial advice that we would be giving, which is, hey, if you open up a brokerage account, here's some things that you need to keep in mind. There's this thing called capital gains. This is what it means. Here's your options that you have in a brokerage account that you might not have in a 401k account. So again, lots of broad financial information that really helps people access the capital markets from a job creation side, we are again at the forefront of not only training people how to use AI in the dev environment, but I think for us, it's also making sure there's some transparency around it. AI is not the silver bullet. It's not going to fix everything. It still needs to be trained. It needs to be built in a way that's accessible. It needs to have sort of a consciousness. The company needs to have a consciousness about it so that you're not just using AI to be predatory. And so I think in that way, we're building a lot of these new jobs. We're looking at how to train people who may have been in, for example, data science or comms to use AI and prompt engineering as part of their job, right? So I think you're going to start to see new job titles actually, and we're sort of adopting some of them. One of my my co-founder was just saying there's a new title called AI DevOps, right? And it's like, oh wow, like some of them are going to stick, some of them won't. But prompt engineering, for example, I think is going to stick around, and I think you're going to see a lot more people involved in prompt engineering that are not technically engineers, and so I think in that space, there's a lot of opportunity for people to get into tech who may not have been in tech before. So that's a lot. I'll leave it there for right now, and then and let's happy to answer some more questions.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. I said, you said two things that I think are really interesting. One, you said about the new job titles, where I think there's a statistic out there that says something like 80% of jobs that will be around in 2030 don't even exist today. So you're really on the forefront of that. And then I love when you said AI for good. And that kind of brings me into this next question that I have. How easy or difficult is it, do you think, and you could talk about some of your experiences in just raising capital, especially when you're talking about something in the AI space?
Sure. So this is my second company. So I have raised capital before, and I'll tell you there's a huge difference. I think one is that we now have a lot more consciousness about sort of the challenges for women, in particular women of color, in terms of raising capital. So there's a lot more funds dedicated to early stage companies, to underrepresented founders, which is great. So there's sort of more funds to go after for us in terms of that. AI, I think, is, again, it is a shiny new thing. So there's outwardly a lot more attention to it. So obviously all the funders are looking at it, but I do think because of that, and we're just coming off of the crypto sort of winter. And remember, like 2 years ago, crypto, you couldn't look somewhere without people talking about crypto and blockchain. So, and now it's like, oh, don't put it in your deck, right? Because we actually have a component of our platform, our reward system is built on top of the Stellar blockchain. Now, it's not a coin. We're not selling anything. It's not a crypto coin. But I think it's interesting because, just a year ago, everyone was talking about crypto and you had to have something related to crypto blockchain. And now it's like, you have to have something related to AI. So it's almost like saturated. And I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to slap AI onto their product and, sort of get into the game. The good news is that I do think those of us, we've been building for about a year and a half now. So we didn't start building as soon as it like popped off. We've been building in AI. I've seen this coming about a year and a half ago, where there was more tools to build on large language models, and remember, ChatGPT is only one. There's actually others out there. There's Cohere. There's Hugging Face has a ton of different types of models. I mean, obviously that's the largest, but there are other models, and so we've been able to use that and I think build some expertise around it in a way that I'm seeing already in our competitive analysis that other people are not doing. So to dive into a small part of the technical piece, ChatGPT alone is an API. You can bring it into your platform and use it. The thing is, for finance, it's not necessarily the best tool alone. It's based on a 2021 model of data. So it has a huge amount of data it's been trained on. I mean, trillions of data points, but they're up until 2021. Well, guess what? There's a whole bunch of new rules in finance, 529 rules, retirement rules, tax rules, I mean, the capital markets are regulatory markets. And so rules and even new products sometimes are coming on board all the time. So if you ask it something that hasn't been updated since 2021, you're going to get the wrong answer, because the generative model itself wants to answer a question. And so it's going to create hallucinations, and it's going to sound real. It's going to sound like this is right. I mean, I think we've heard about the lawyer who used ChatGPT. It sounded right as long as you didn't check the reference points, right? And I think that's what we're going to see if you're not careful in personal finance, is that you can't just throw ChatGPT alone into your platform and think it's going to run without mistakes. It is. And the last thing that we want is for people to be getting personal financial advice that's wrong. And I would say that one other thing that's really to differentiator, and this goes back to the experience itself. So I'm sure a lot of you have tested ChatGPT and put in a financial question, and it's going to give you an iterative answer, a generative answer, and it sounds good enough. But there's kind of two things that are missing. One is it doesn't ask you questions. And I mean, as financial advisors or anyone in the financial space, whenever someone asks you a financial question, you almost always have to say, well, it depends. And then you have to ask a couple of questions before you give an answer, right? And so that's called a multi-turn conversation, the back and forth. That doesn't happen in ChatGPT alone. It only gives you an answer based on a question you're asking. So that's the difference. What we've built is a multi-turn conversation. And then the other thing is that there's no call to action. So we are in the business of helping people build wealth and get involved in the capital markets, which means you have to take action. So now that I've introduced you or walked you through, for example, maybe a brokerage account, the idea is that you want to open one, right? And I think that's where a lot of these other platforms fall off, is that it's like giving you information, but it's not really walking you through to execution.
That's a great point. Actually, I want to pick up on one of the things you pointed out, that some of the large language models rely on data that's old or older, 2021, and the regulatory environment changes daily. One of the things, obviously, that we do at ICAN is we try to knock down regulatory barriers to entry to the capital markets. And so I'm wondering, are there regulatory barriers, or what were the regulatory barriers you've encountered? And maybe that's one of them, like the changing pace of them. Yeah.
So I think there's still probably many that we don't know of. I think there's a lot. What are the like sort of mines in the landmines along the way? But there's some things that we're already thinking about very clearly. And this is based somewhat on my experience as a compliance sort of regulatory attorney, but also in my previous company, which is people are, always asking, well, how are you not going to, sort of, what are the regulatory challenges of giving financial advice as it relates to stocks? Because that starts to get into like FINRA, SEC, right? Regulatory space. The key to what we're doing is that we're walking people through sort of a decision-making process around products and like sort of financial questions, but we're not taking their money. We'll never touch their money. We're never going to invest it for them. So if they're looking for example, a brokerage account or even an IRA, we're going to kind of give them the information that they need to know before they open that account to be informed decision makers. And then we hand that off to one of our partners, whether that's like a robo-advisor or Schwab or Fidelity. And then generally we make money if we make a sale through that. And so we're very transparent about that. And then we kind of vet those partners as they come on board. And I think that's, for us, that's a safe space right now because it's still taking an educational approach. But I do think that over the next year or so, we're going to see, I think, more refinement on the regulatory side of like, what does it mean at what point do cross that line? And we're going to be following that very closely, because we do want eventually to do a lot more hands-on stuff around your portfolio and investing strategies.
Great. I love it. Well, thanks so much, Ramona, for joining us. This has been fantastic. You're exactly the kind of person we want to feature on Capital Ideas. For everybody else, please tune in to our next episode of Capital Ideas. And if you want more information about ICAN, you can go to our website, www.icanlaw.org. Thanks very much. We'll see you next time.